Hey everyone, how's it going? So this is going to be our last topic for the chemistry unit, and it's just going to talk about chemical reactions and the difference between physical changes and chemical changes. So let's take a look. So not everything that we see is considered a chemical reaction. So the difference is, for a physical change or well, not a physical reaction, but just physical changes, we can change the way that something looks, but that doesn't necessarily change its chemical composition. So for example, if I had a piece of paper and I ripped that piece of paper in half, that would be considered a physical change. The paper is still paper, we've just changed the physical appearance of it. And we're going to take a look in a moment at a few more examples of physical changes. But chemical changes are changes that happen chemically, so we rearrange the elements and stuff involved. So they're changes that happen on an atomic level, so involving the elements themselves. And when that happens, we get new substances that are formed, and usually there's some sort of like energy or heat that is given off, or that is used in the reaction. So just looking at physical changes, like I said, there's no molecular change happening. There's no, we're not changing the elements or anything like that. We're just changing the appearance of it, basically. So like I said, ripping a paper. Or it could involve a change of state. So things like melting ice or boiling water, going from solid to liquid or liquid to gas, or vice versa. A couple of other examples, crushing a can. So if I had like a can of whatever your beverage of choice is, and I squish it, I'm changing the physical appearance of it, but there's nothing changing on a chemical level. It's just changing the way something looks. Another example would be like making Kool-Aid. So we are putting the powder into the water and we're mixing it together, but essentially it's still water and powder. There's no chemical reaction that's happening. So there's a bunch of different signs that a chemical reaction is happening. So one major one is if something burns or explodes or sets on fire, pretty good chance that a chemical reaction is happening. Another example would be is if a precipitate is formed. So that's if we mix a couple of like liquids together and then there's a solid that ends up forming on the bottom. Alright, so some more signs. There is light emitted. So when you crack a glow stick and it starts glowing, that is an example of a chemical reaction because the chemicals inside the glow stick are reacting together. Also, if a gas is produced, and a lot of times you'll be able to see the gas coming out of it, and that's another sign. Or bubbles. Bubbles is another sign that there's a chemical reaction happening. A change in taste or smell, so like rotting food, for example, there is a chemical reaction happening. Or if there's a change in temperature without us physically changing the temperature. So for example, if I had a drink and I put ice in the drink and the drink cools off, that's not a chemical reaction. That's me physically changing the temperature of the drink. Same thing if you're like boiling water to make tea or coffee. We're physically heating it, we're physically heating that water. So that's not a chemical reaction. That would be a physical reaction like we saw before. The last one is if there's a significant color change. And I just want to say that, again, this isn't always going to be the case, that a chemical reaction is happening. So like, if I mix Kool-Aid with water, just because there's a color change doesn't mean that there's a chemical reaction happening. The same thing as if you put food coloring in something. That also is not a chemical reaction. it's basically just your liquid plus food coloring. It changes the color, but there's no chemical reaction happening. But if I had like chemicals, you might see later on in chemistry, if you decide to continue with it through high school, and you're doing reactions, you might see that certain solutions produce different color changes. One thing that comes to the top of my mind is fireworks. The way that fireworks get their different colors are because of different chemicals. Yeah, so those are just some of the signs of a chemical reaction. I'm going to be making a series of short videos, and your assignment for this is going to be to decide whether a physical or a chemical change is occurring. But that's it for this unit, actually. So I hope that you enjoyed these videos. I hope you found them informative. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. Have a good one, guys. See you.